Diane'sBlueHeartsAndButterflies.com, and I am working on a 4-part series for my baby cards for the August class that I'm having, and we're going to be using the Wildly Happy stamp set that is in the 2020-21 annual catalog. I have some of my ladies that are needing some baby cards, and so I had a request to be able to do those. I also used for this card the stitch shapes, the ovals for this one, and the painted labels dies, the swirly label that is in there, and then I also used the Birch stamp set, which I believe is retired. So I'm using a lot of products and things that I had on hand in order to be able to do these, so hope that you'll bear with me on these. So I got a lot of my ideas off of Pinterest, and I was kind of inspired by one of the ladies to with this card, but she had used another oval, and I wanted to use that swirly label because I thought it kind of looked like a nest. So we will go ahead and get started. The pieces that you will need will be the 8.5 by 5.5 thick white cardstock, which is the best one to do for the card bases because it's thicker, and this one is scored in the landscape at 4 1/4 and folded. You will also need a piece of crumb cake cardstock that is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. The piece of white cardstock is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 inch of the Whisper white cardstock. This one doesn't need to be thick, and this is what we're going to stamp the background on. This is the second largest oval stitch shaped die, and I've already gone ahead and stamped the foxes on this and colored them with the pencils. I happen to have a Cajun Craze pencil, and when you're using the pencils, another way, instead of using water to dilute it, another way that you can kind of get it to look a little more smooth is with the blender pen, and it just kind of smooths everything out and gets rid of those lines, but it doesn't dilute the color like the water. And so that's what I wanted to do on this one. On my original card, I actually used the blends and colored it with that, so it does kind of give a little more shading. And then you could also use just your Stampin' Write marker if you wanted to kind of highlight the white in the tail and the face. There is the white chalk marker as well, but I just kind of wanted to create a softer look on this card, so I am just using the blender pen. I went ahead and colored ahead of time just to save on time and have you watch me color. So if you wanted to, you could go back in and add some more highlights with your watercolor pencils or whatever. And then with the watercolor pencils, just remember, you just keep wiping it off, and when it no longer has a color, it's cleaned off. And those are really good to have. So the other thing is, like I said, that swirly label. I did this out of the Cajun Craze cardstock, and I'm going to set those aside. We on the Birch background stamp, you can do this several different ways. The Stamparatus helps keep it a big stamp, so that you're not having to try to use those big blocks to hold them. So the Stamparatus is good. Sometimes I even just leave it in my case and put the paper on it and push it down and have it that way. But I wanted to go ahead and do use the Stamparatus for this, and I had already kind of stamped so I could see where it was. And in order to get a little bit better of a stamp, this is a red rubber stamp, so you don't need the black foam piece that goes with the Stamparatus. But in order to get a little bit better of a coverage for that, I did go ahead and put my silicone craft sheet under there to be able to kind of give it a little bit of a pushback. And with these bigger, larger stamps, you do want to ink it up with the ink pad to the stamp instead of trying to have the stamp come over to the ink pad. And so I'm just using crumb cake ink with this birch background. And I didn't want to use the magnets because I need it to cover the whole entire piece. And then you just really rub it very well to make sure that you get very good coverage. Sorry if it's shaking the camera. I also put the case behind the I can't think of words. This piece that it's on, just so that I can get even stamp inking of the stamp. So this is our birch background. I'm going to go ahead and just move this off to the side. And I'll bring everything back over. It's fairly easy to stick this one together. Apparently this one had been used for someone else, so I will fix that inside. But I'm going to go ahead and adhere these pieces together. Actually, let me pause just a moment. Okay, I went and got another piece because I do want to stamp the sentiment on the inside. So we have the new Stampin' Seal and the Seal Plus that replaced our old snail. And I'm still new, trying to learn how to use it. And but it seems to hold very well, and you don't need quite as much of it as before. So this crumb cake layer I just put on the front, and then the birch background, I'm going to put the kind of knot up at the top because the fox will be going down here to cover up some of that area, so I wanted to have the other part kind of stick. And this one was cut fairly close so that there's not much of a border around the crumb cake, or the crumb cake around this piece. And then I went ahead and adhered this oval directly to the swirly label. And then I used dimensionals to pop that up there it is. Okay. And then I'm just going to pop this up over here. Now I also had some old embellishments that I need to use up, and these were the bright candy dots, and it had the Cajun Craze color in it. So I just took some of those dots and placed them around the front, give it a little added dimension. And then, like I said, on the inside I wanted to use the So Tiny, So Small, So Loved by All sentiment, and I'm just going to stamp that in the Memento. Oh, well, that's so much for that. It's Memento Tuxedo Black. I'll put something else over here. And so I have that, and I will put something on the other side of that and later. But that is basically the first of the 4 cards, and so I hope that you'll check out my blog, and the dimensions for everything is there on there, and come back and check my website again. Thank you.